Welcome in, Paul Catalina, alongside my good friend Royden Ogletree. He's the guest co-host of the day, and we're going to continue to have rotating guest co-hosts. Royden agreed to be in the rotation.
It's not just me?
It's not just you. Wherever we have a pitching rotation.
What?
We're like, yeah, we have a pitching rotation.
4 or 5 men?
Right to this week's 4 guys.
Oh.
I'm trying to see if I can. I'm going to have like a 5th man, but it's going to be kind of a stretch.
Right.
A stretch 4 almost. Mm-hmm. You know,
taxing the bullpen.
Yeah, I don't want to tax the bullpen too much.
Right.
So, but you are co-host number 2, and in case you've noticed, we're in different chairs from yesterday to today because the first note I got from my best friend, my wife, Jack, Garrett, random people online was, it doesn't look like you're comfortable in the bar stool. And look, when you're short and trying to do a television show or podcast with video, there are not many chair options that are going to make you look comfortable. Now, the problem with this chair, the reason we didn't use it is I look extremely comfortable here.
Too comfortable.
Exactly. So I don't want to look like I'm going to nod off.
Right. No, I was saying before we started, there are no chairs unless you have 6-pack abs and are like 6'5" that you can look comfortable. Because all of a sudden, you'll see me this entire time just like
And you're tall.
Yeah, but
God
looks
loves you more than me and made you tall.
Well, you know, I talked to him earlier and he did say that.
Yeah. I mean, it might be minuscule, but those are the things that I know.
No, you can't look like a normal human being. Where it's like, hey, we're gonna do some business deals, you know?
Yeah.
Like it doesn't work that way.
I could get some of those fancy like wing back chairs.
Yeah.
That cost like $5,000 a piece, and everybody kind of looks good in those.
No, just lazy boys. How about that? Where we just kick up the feet and have an Alex.
That might be where we're headed. I don't know. But Royden works at KWTX here in town.
I do, in fact.
And he also hosts a podcast about movies, which is I've been on several times. Please plug your podcast.
It's called the One Take Podcast. Go listen to it. There are dozens of you out there that already listen to it, so
Yes.
I really appreciate that. Paul is on there with some interesting takes.
Yes, I do. But I've only been back once since my Beyonce take.
Right. Well, that's on you.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's fine. I know, I get it. You have 2 very big Beyonce fans, and I put you in an awkward
As is
position.
most of the world.
Yeah, I'm not a Beyonce fan. I just mentioned that she's not as good of an actress as she is a singer, and that she's ruined a couple movies that she's been in.
Say one good thing about Beyonce.
One good thing about Beyonce,
Yeah.
she's an unbelievable singer.
Okay, perfect.
Unbelievable singer.
We can get that off of our
But I'm
back.
just saying right now that she ruined the live-action Lion King.
I think the live-action Lion King ruined the Lion King.
But she was the worst part of it, and it wasn't even close.
How do you feel about Taylor Swift?
Oh, I'm a big I'm part of the squad.
Oh, okay.
I'm a big Tay-Tay fan.
What about acting?
Oh, come on, please. I mean, she's only been in like a couple things. She's not good.
You a big Valentine's Day person?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think like Beyonce's better just because she's
been in better projects.
In more things, but yeah. So anyway, to college football now.
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
exactly.
That's
Roy
what
and I
this
can
is
get
about.
on tangents, and we'll get on one. The second segment essentially will be a tangent.
Right.
But you'll get to that in a second. That is there's no preparation for that. You just have to answer tough questions. Tough questions.
Awesome.
Imagine that you are, running for Senate and have been accused of like an inappropriate affair inside your office. That's
So
how hard
most
hitting these
senators.
questions. Yes.
Okay, this will be easy.
That's segment 2. But first off, the ACC had to postpone their meeting last night because of the tragic shooting at North Carolina. But they were going to meet, and it appears that there's momentum now to sway one of the 4 holdouts, and which I would think would be NC State, if I'm just guessing. But again, who knows? Who's going to vote which way, why? But Florida State and Clemson don't appear to be in any rush to help the ACC. So if they get that 4th vote that they're holding out, if they swing the vote, then Stanford, Cal, SMU would come to the ACC. Now, by any metric, it just seems wonky and strange that they would be there, but it's very weird that we've pushed college football to this point where you have to make very clear desperation moves. Like, in no way does this not, everybody is in this scenario is desperate for something.
It feels yucky to like that's a weird word, but it feels weird to have and I know a name is just a name, like the Big 12 had 10 teams or whatever. Like, to have the Atlantic Coast Conference, and I'm stealing this joke from somebody on Twitter, just be the All Coast Conference now is weird, and it doesn't feel right, and I don't like the way that it sits. But you have to do something to be like, you don't want to go the way of the dodo. You don't want to be the Pac-12 and all of a sudden be left like the kid with the finger in the dam. Like, you can't. You have to do something, and I think, though, of the remaining schools that haven't been poached, and SMU begging to get in, that makes the most sense. But then again, it does feel these trips are going to be terrible.
Well, and look, and the thing is that football, it doesn't matter. Like,
for football, it doesn't.
Once a week. Like, and granted, you might be a little more tired on the back end of a trip than you would be normally.
Yeah.
You know, if you're flying from Syracuse to Berkeley, you know, something like that. You know, all those places on the East Coast of Dallas is really not really that big of a deal.
Yeah.
I've pretty much done almost all of those flights. I've done Dallas to San Francisco. That one actually will get you a little bit. I've done Miami to San Francisco. That one gets you a lot. But
it's not that. And I mean, we're talking about football, and it's been said that, oh, these conference commissioners know about the other sports. They're taking that into account. Are you?
Or do you have to, again,
or does it matter, you know, at this point?
But, Roy, when you make moves out of desperation, there are things that happen.
Yeah.
SMU is desperate to get into a power conference because this might be their only chance to do that. So they are willing to forego 7 years.
And millions of dollars.
And if they have it in the kitty, then good for them. But it's not money they're going to get back necessarily. It's money they're spending, investing in the long term that may never actually pay off in terms of profit. Again, this is just about being back in the big time.
Yeah.
Like they were before the death penalty.
Well, somewhere down the road, they have done the math that being in one of these major conferences will pay more dividends than not. So, you know, than foregoing those millions of dollars in conference revenue.
Yeah. And then Stanford and Cal, they're desperate to remain in a power conference because if they don't, then the world could easily pass them by. You know, Stanford in particular has very much put a premium on being good at every single sport you can have. And for that athletic department to all of a sudden have to go, okay, well,
now we're going to go play in the Mountain West.
Although a lot of this is totally their fault. I mean, they're in this position because one of the smartest institutions in the world with tons of smart people didn't believe what was going on right in front of it. Same with Cal. They're in this situation because of their own making. The ACC is desperate to stay relevant in a power conference. Florida State is desperate to get out of it and make more money, as is Clemson. They're just
As is probably Miami.
Quiet about it. Yeah, exactly. But we know Florida State and Clemson.
Yeah.
So, like, we can assume UNC, Miami maybe have those same kind of feelings. Miami has been less relevant than all the other three for a much longer time, but their history is grandiose because of what they did in the 80s, 90s, and in 2001, which was essentially they're the walking wood chipper of football teams. And so you have all of that. And then you throw on the fact that, like, if Florida State and Clemson left before they expanded,
right,
then ESPN can renegotiate with them and take money away. So you need to stay at 15 teams at least. So you have to guard against at least 2 teams leaving. And if you get 3, then, you know, if you get the feeling that maybe more than that are going to leave, you can always call Oregon State and Washington State and be like, guess what? You guys are in, please.
Yeah.
You know, we got to keep this money. But
what's the logistical, or what's the probable outcome, right? The probable outcome is that Clemson and Florida State go to the SEC. Regardless of, like, we think that's weird or not, it just seems like the writing is on the wall there. Well, the SEC and Greg Sankey it's like, no, we don't want.
Well, the thing is, they don't have to say they want anybody until
they do.
Until it's easy for them to do it. Look, Texas and Oklahoma had a couple years left on their deal, right?
Yeah.
So with Florida State and Clemson, they don't have to say anything about Florida State and Clemson until those teams can figure out a way out of this, decade-long plus grant of rights that they have.
Yeah.
So until they figure out a plan for that, the SEC can just sit back and go, okay, we're cool. Look, we're the SEC. Nothing bad is going to happen to us.
Yeah, we got Vanderbilt.
Nothing bad, even still, nothing bad is going to happen to us.
Yeah.
They can honestly say that. They are a guy in a white suit, going into an all-you-can-eat, barbecue rib place thinking, I'm fine. Nothing's going to happen to me.
And you know what? Probably won't.
Probably won't. He'll walk out of there.
You won't even use a napkin.
One drop of barbecue sauce on him. Nobody will bump into him. It won't even smell like smoke for some reason. It will just peel off him. That's the SEC. And
meanwhile, the Pac-12 got arrested before they could get into the building.
Yeah, they couldn't.
No barbecue.
They couldn't get in the same truck. All that. Just bad. So their things have worked out because the SEC, one, understood who it was. Two, understood how to market itself very, very well. A lot of the things that we believe about the SEC are true, but they're also vaunted by the fact that they're marketing.
Oh, it's a lot of state-run media coming out of the SEC. We are the best. Why? Shut up.
Yes, they've won a bunch of national titles. They have more schools per team. They have 16 teams. Of those 16 teams, most of them really care about football.
Right.
Really, really care. Now, whether they have paid off on that in what you would call recent times is all in the eye of the beholder. Tennessee was recent in that they won a national title and that everybody in this room, well, Levi might not have been, but everybody in this room was alive when that happened.
Do I remember it?
No, I do because I was there. I was there and experienced the pain of it on the other side.
Yeah.
But
it's fine. Everything's fine.
Everything's fine. So the 1998. So they won in 98, 99. Florida State won in 2013. They're an ACC school, so that was the last one of them. So is that recent? That's a decade ago. So when do you go, what's recent? Miami won a decade ago. SEC teams, Florida, it's been 15 years.
Most people would argue that whatever version of the playoff or whatever is how you use this as a measuring stick. Mm-hmm. But then again, then you have teams like Oklahoma and Texas who hadn't won this decade. So, or for 2 decades.
Oklahoma was 2000.
Yeah.
Right?
So I don't know. If it falls through with Florida State and Clemson, obviously, like you said, they have so many more years left on that deal. Mm-hmm. Oregon State and Washington State have kind of just been left out in the cold by every conference.
And you know what?
Is that the most likely outcome? Is that, yeah.
I would think so, just because of travel partners in the West. It would make some Olympic sports a lot easier to do.
I understand Stanford. Why not go after all of them at once? Is it just we'll have too many people?
I think there's probably a limited amount of
money to go around
that ESPN said, and since SMU's and SMU is in a market that's bigger than Corvallis and Pullman combined, so
is there any?
But it doesn't necessarily carry anything. But
right, are there any teams on that coast that are willing to come over that make any sense?
No. And again, no, not really. Until you get to the next wave where, say, Florida State and Clemson would leave, mm-hmm. and then you have some other open spots, and before the ACC drops below whatever number, I
love UCF to the Big 12. That just makes sense, obviously, for logistical reasons to have been in the ACC. Yeah. But they jumped at going to the and I'm glad that the Big 12 picked them up. But
I do think that Stanford Cal will be the tipping point for maybe everything else will be regional.
Yeah.
Because you can't just send volleyball teams all over the country for 3 months.
To get back to that point that I was trying to make a while ago is that for these other sports, football, one way, it's tough for the logistical people because if you don't know, they ship out all the equipment on a Tuesday and they have to drive across country in an 18-wheeler mm-hmm. and get out there. So it's tough for those folks. But for basketball on a Tuesday to have to go to Corvallis, or not Corvallis, to go to Stanford and from Tallahassee or whatever, that's a tough turnaround. Granted, these guys are going to Hawaii for all these tournaments and Jamaica and whatever.
But for football, to 18-wheeler, if Stanford has 2 road games in a row,
Yeah.
They're not going home. That guy isn't going home. He's going to live like a regular long haul trucker.
Yeah.
And he's going to have to drive to Syracuse, and then he's going to have to drive to Clemson, and then he may have to drive back. Or you just have 2 sets of gear, right? Maybe you just
have to pay for that and split them.
Yeah, exactly. Like, all right, well, here's our, this guy is going to be here, and this is going to be our stuff for when we're actually at home. But yeah, there's going to be a lot. It's going to be a headache that even for football and logistically, it's just not going to be easy.
Right.
And that's why when you make moves out of desperation, you get desperate things.
Meanwhile, San Diego State's like, hey, we'd like to also.
See, San Diego State should have been anybody who's like a Pac-12 apologist. That should have been the first notion of maybe things aren't going well enough.
When we didn't include them.
When they said we're going to get out.
Right.
And then the Pac-12 was like, hey, we don't really have anything for you. and then
can I interest you in what? Apple TV Plus?
San Diego State's like, what now? And like look, we're going to. It's going to be great. But like today, as it sits, we don't have anything for you, and we have no idea what we're going to do.
It's a Kevin Hart joke. If I got to move my money around from my checking to my savings, and then maybe we'll get it.
Yeah.
Get it together? No.
Yeah. That was exactly where they were. So, and that's a program that can't do what SMU can do and just decide like we don't need any money.
Right.
Like what's a 4th private jet? I don't.
As a Florida State fan, how do you feel about the imminent death of all that you know and love?
Here's what I know. It's very weird in that I know that no matter what, Florida State's going to be all right. Like whatever like future Super League format, Florida State's going to be in that. They have enough skins on the wall. They're a huge brand. Not maybe as big as they think they are right at this exact moment.
Right.
Like they're kind of, like, hey, you remember the late 90s? You remember that? It was awesome, right?
It's really cool, guys.
You guys remember that Y2K year? Like that whole year we were the defending national champions.
Remember Jameis Winston?
Yeah.
Remember?
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of how they are. And look, they're probably going to be very, very good again this year. Whether that translates to college football playoff success good, being one of the top 4 teams in the country, that remains to be seen. They have the we'll see how that LSU games goes and how they play Clemson in like 3 weeks after that.
Yeah.
And if they win those 2 games, then you can say like, well, maybe this team is back to being who they think they are. And as a fan, look, do I enjoy like when they brought the new teams in, like, oh, great, Syracuse and Boston College and Pitt.
Yeah.
Like no disrespect to them, but Pitt was the one I was like, oh, that's kind of cool, but
there's no history there.
Never really cared for playing Duke and Wake Forest in football.
Mm-hmm.
And Wake Forest has completely flipped the script on FSU lately. So to make all of the fans pay for that. But again, look, whatever's best for the school, I'll support long term. But I also know, and Texas and Oklahoma fans are about to find this out, particularly Oklahoma fans. Oklahoma fans got used to winning the conference every single year. And if they didn't, it wasn't long before they did it again.
Back, yeah.
So it wasn't like they had 5-year rebuild periods. The ACC has, by and large, been won by 2 schools over the last 40 years, and that's Clemson and Florida State. And Florida State didn't even join until 1991 or so, whenever that was. So since that time, Florida State and Clemson have won pretty much every title, save for a few. So if fans of those 2 schools think that they're just going to go to the SEC and be one of the top 2 teams every single year, same with Texas and Oklahoma, well, look, you're not.
Well, you follow them on Twitter, you know that.
Yeah.
They think they are.
But you're not. And that's not even me disliking you. That's just math.
Yeah.
Like, just not. And what Nick Saban is doing right now is not normal. It's an outlier. If you look all through college football, the greatest dynasties, none of them have been as long as Alabama's, and they might be at the end because his best pupil has now become the teacher in Kirby Smart. So nothing lasts forever.
I will believe Nick Saban is dead when I attend the funeral.
Exactly.
That's just not true. Like, it is so many people, the reports of my death have been greatly exaggerated. That's how I feel about Nick Saban.
And look, I feel the same way, but I do think that Georgia is the team, and Kirby Smart was the guy who could turn it away from him as much as anybody else because...
Well, yeah, and they've done it, and they are the powerhouse now.
He's they're the same, but he's younger and knows everything that Nick does.
Yeah.
So, those are the things. Plus, they're outspending them right now, probably because he's afraid of Nick. All those things. So, yeah, but, I mean, it comes around. All right, so, okay, Florida State, you get in the SEC, and you get this money. Can you spend? Can you raise as much money as Nick Saban can in an hour? In an hour, Nick Saban and Kirby Smart can raise a ton of money. They're like the Koch brothers. I mean, they could just, if anybody gets that reference, but they could.
How many Tallahassee car dealerships are there that can...
Again, there's...
Per capita.
I've apparently found out recently that we have more people that just weren't spending money because they were mad at the direction of the university. But... Again, can you spend to that level? Right now, what Florida's problem is? You know why they're so far behind Georgia? In spite of their, deep coffers, just didn't have the willingness to spend that much.
Well, I think it was something that Georgia had spent. I don't know the math on this correctly, and if you're a Georgia fan watching this, don't get mad. It was $100 million or something, some enormous amount of money to win the national championship the year that they didn't win it, the year that they beat up on Baylor in the Sugar Bowl or whatever. And then they're like, you know what? Let's just do it again, run it back. And they have, and now they've won 2 in a row and are probably going to win 3 in a row. So
Kirby Smart spends $3 million more on recruiting budget than anybody else. Than anybody else in college football. $3 million more a year. And so that's where they are right now. So are you willing to do that? If you're willing to get in that conference, that's what you have to be willing to do.
Well, it also becomes the thing, and I say this as a Baylor fan, where it's you have to be willing, I think, if you're not going to spend that money, and we're just going to do it through sheer will and determination and get our players that we love and going to coach them up, rah, 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 that you're going to have to be willing to 5 games, 6 games, 10 games, and then maybe we have the chance of winning one every 5 years or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you're willing to live with that, more power to you.
But not everybody can do that. Not everybody can do that. You get in a conference with a school that's as big as Ohio State.
Do you have the mental fortitude of Baylor fans?
Yeah. Yeah, do you? Baylor could join the SEC tomorrow and have that money, and that's great. But the thing is, it doesn't change the fact that Georgia's a much bigger school with many more people they can go to get that money.
Yeah.
Baylor could join the same. Baylor could join the Big Ten. Well, you're never going to be as big as Ohio State.
No.
I mean,
it's just not logistically possible. And you kind of got to look at this with Clemson as well, too. They're not a big school. I mean, you kind of look at their numbers and you think that because of the pageantry and how many people they have attending football games and what they put on and how they've accomplished it, they're not that big. They're not that big of an institution.
Yeah, they're a very medium-sized college.
Somehow Dabo Swinney, I mean, and obviously it was a little bit paved before him, but he's turned them into a powerhouse. Somehow he's been able to convince kids that you need to be at this small school in South Carolina.
Yeah.
So I what it means for them, I'm not sure. I think Florida State, like you said, will be
Well, I think Clemson
okay.
is the same. It depends on how much you want to spend. That's just where you are. But also, desperate moves often don't turn out great results.
No.
I mean, look at anybody who finds their prom date on the day before. Your tux isn't going to look good. Her dress isn't going to look good. You guys are going to have weird pictures together.
I wouldn't know any. No, I don't know anything about that.
When we come back, Royden gets grilled, and we get to know our co-host. This is the Triple Option on 365 Sports.